Hi ladies. This video is to show you the pads that I wore this month in November. Um, it was an absolutely just crazy period. I don't know what happened. It was just nuts. So I'm going to just briefly go through all the pads that I wore so you can see them, but I'm going to try to keep it quick, and I don't have them in order. The last time I did a video like this, I put them in the order of the days, and I don't have them arranged like that at all this time. I was traveling on my period this time, and I actually thought that the stress of traveling would delay my period. I knew that it was due, but I didn't really think that it would start, because that has happened to me before, that when I travel, sometimes I'll just be late, and I don't start until I actually get back from my trip. So I knew that I was due, but I didn't believe that I would really start, especially because the reason that I was traveling was a very stressful reason. And so I really just thought that all the strain would just delay my period. But just in case, I took my Lunapads with me on the trip. And like I said, I didn't really think that I would need them, but I did take these along just in case. And I am so glad that I had these. Let me show you what I did. I just used this wet bag. I have so many wet bags, but I just used this one. This one is actually for diapers, and this part is the dry part. It's actually just meant to hold wipes, but I just put my stack of Lunapads down in here. And then, of course, this is the wet section, and it's rather small, but I didn't expect to actually be using this. So I just reached in my drawer and grabbed the stack of Lunapads and put them in this wet bag and stuffed that down in my travel bag. And I started exactly the day that I was supposed to, which just completely shocked me. So when I first started, I just put in a panty liner. And then I started using the Lunapads, and I have a newfound appreciation for these. It was so great because I was busy the time that I was there, and I was on the road a lot. And these were just great to have these have this pad in and just change out these little liners. And because I had this wet bag here, and this wet compartment is rather small for traveling. This was just so great because this bag held so many liners. So as I was using the liners, I was just putting them down in this wet bag, and it held everything. This was also really nice. Like I said, I just took the Lunapads with me because I didn't actually think I was going to start. So I didn't pack up any of my pretty pads that I wanted to wear. I just took the Lunapads because I just grabbed the whole stack of them, not expecting to actually use them. But because I was traveling and I was on the road a lot and in and out of rest stops, and I was with a group of people. And of course, I wanted to keep it discreet that I had my period. So this was just great because every time we stopped at a rest stop, I would just pull out a clean, while we were still in the vehicle and kind of off to the side where nobody was watching. I just pulled out a clean liner and stuffed it down in my pocket, and then I just went in the rest stop like that. Just with the liner in my pocket, so I wasn't even carrying anything with me, and so nobody knew that I had my period, except my husband. And so then I would change out the liner, and the used one, I just rolled it up and put it in my pocket, and that's not, and then until we got back to the vehicle. And then when we were back in the vehicle, I put it down in this little wet bag. I could have just taken the wet bag in with me, but I was trying to keep it simple. And because of our trip and the purpose of our trip, we were all just grimy anyway, dirty and grimy. So I didn't have any qualms about putting this in my actual pocket of my jeans, just for a few minutes until I got back and to the vehicle and could put it in here. And it was not, I mean, a few of these, you know, did kind of, like you could see on the back of the liner, or the insert rather, you could see that it was starting to go through, but, you know, nothing came out of this or anything. You know, it wasn't messy. It was not as bad as it sounds. And so I really appreciated having, just being able to change these inserts really easily and just leave the pad in all day. Now I also have, these are actual Lunapads, but I also have this little set that I got from Etsy. This was from Tamarack, I think, Tamarack, and this is a Jazzy Pad. And so I did have this little set too that's very similar to Lunapads, and I use this as well. Now I did have a leak, which just totally shocked me with this because I know you can't see it on the camera, but it does have, you might be able to hear it. It does have a waterproof lining in there. So how it leaked through, I have no idea. It just totally shocked me. But like I said, my period was just going crazy. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. I don't know what was happening. But I did have a day where I was wearing the Jazzy Pads, and it leaked, or you know, it soaked all the way through, and soaked through this, and all the way to the other side, and had gotten on my underwear. It did not go through. It didn't go through to my clothes, so it didn't show, but it did actually get onto my panties all the way through this with the waterproof barrier. So. I don't recall what kind of barrier this is, but I certainly don't blame it on the pad construction. I just, I blame it on whatever was making my period so crazy. So then once I got home, fortunately I was back home again before I exhausted the supply of Lunapads. So once I got back home, I started wearing my pretty pads that I wanted to wear. I especially had some new ones I had just gotten that I wanted to try. And so I was really looking forward to that. But because I'd already been having my period, I didn't expect it to last very much longer. Because I have said in other videos, I have talked about how my periods have been shorter and lighter since I started using cloth pads, and that I had in fact been disappointed a few times because there were other really pretty pads that I wanted to wear that I didn't get to because the period was so short. But all of that I've said in the other videos just completely flew out the window this time, because my period was actually quite heavy and quite long. It was a full 5 days. The previous period I had in October was only 3.5 days. But this was every bit of 5 days, and very heavy, basically the whole time. And that's how my periods used to be when I was using disposables. But since switching to cloth, I'd been noticing a lot of differences. Now, with that said, I have mentioned in some of my other videos that after switching to cloth, I had not yet experienced any relief from the heavy cramping that I was really hoping to have relief from, but I was having shorter and lighter periods. Well, this month, my period was heavy and long, just like they used to be, but I did amazingly, and I don't know how, I don't know why, but I did amazingly have slightly less cramping than I have in the past. So it was still, that's just something that I personally struggle with. I don't know why I have very heavy cramping, but it's sometimes just unbearable. And this month, even though I was bleeding heavily, and under a lot of stress at the time, the pain from the cramping was actually tolerable. I mean, I still was in a lot of pain, but um, I was actually able to still function normally. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the cloth pads. I think that it will take more time to tell, to see how things go next month and in the future. And I really think that the heavy and long period was mostly stress induced. I really do think that. I'm just grateful that I had some moderate relief from cramps. But I think the actual problem was that I was under a great deal of stress at the time, which was the event that took me out of town. So once I got back home, I started wearing all these pretty pads that I really wanted to try. This is Party in My Pants. So is this one. This one was a bit too narrow for me, and so I got the wing extender, which makes it a perfect fit. And so when I ordered again, I ordered the slightly wider one. I don't recall what this one is called. But with the wing extender on this one and the wider size in this, they are just perfect. And even though they are so thin, I didn't have any leaks. I didn't actually wear these at the heaviest time of my period, but really the whole cycle was, or the whole period was pretty heavy this time. So I didn't really have any light days. So, these did get tested quite well. It wasn't the heaviest time, the heaviest day, but, still quite a bit. And I didn't have any leaks or anything. Of course, I will go ahead and say that I do like to change my cloth pads often. And that is actually one of the benefits of cloth, in my opinion, because I changed disposables quite often as well, because I just could not stand that wet feeling. And of course, with cloth, there's less of a wet feeling. But I do like the luxury of being able to just change to a fresh pad every time. Like, just every time I go to the restroom, I just go ahead and change. In my mind, especially with cloth, because I own all these pads and I'll never run out of them. And it's not costing me more money. I mean, they did cost quite a bit to buy them all in the first place, but it's not costing me more money to change to fresh one every time like it did with disposables. But I just really like that luxury of just changing to something clean every time, whether it's all used up or not. And I did that with disposables as well, and of course it did cost quite a bit of money to change frequently. But I just like that cleaner feeling. I don't like the wet feeling. And with cloth, there's less of that wet feeling because it soaks into the fabric, so that wetness is not just sitting on your skin. But, I mean, let's be honest, you can still feel that it's wet, I mean, it is something in your underwear that is wet, and so you can still feel it. So I just go ahead and change every time. And sometimes, honestly, I'm so heavy that even though I change frequently, I have still just completely used the pad. Not this one, but there was one. It was the Sock Monkeys that I'll get to in a minute. It was just, I didn't have it in very long, but it was just completely, and this is a longer pad too. And I didn't leave it in especially long. But it was just, I was so heavy at the time that it was just completely covered, I mean, the wings and everything. And I actually am surprised that it cleaned up so well. So some of these really got tested, some of these didn't, because I do like to change them often. So this is Yurtcraft. This is Mama Cloth. And I just really enjoy that print. It's adorable. This is Purple Ducks. This one actually held up quite well. It's very thin, like some of these others, and it held well. This is Fig Leaves, and Fig Leaves. This one was brand new. I just had ordered it, so I couldn't wait to try it. And it's the same with this. This is Fig Leaves. This is County Cloth Creations. This is her newer style. She still apparently still does the same, and I don't have any of the others handy right now, but she still has her regular pads, but then this is called the basic pad. And so the prices are actually quite a bit cheaper on the basic pads, and I just love them. I mean, the edges are not finished the same as the other pads, and it doesn't have that, the shape really. It just looks kind of flat and plain, and the serged edges, but it's still very thin, like her other pads, very thin, and it's just so soft. I mean, you can just, there's no stiffness at all. It's just so soft. And this one, I just love the print. It's a flannel top, and it's just adorable with the sharks, and it has this polka dot back, so I had to have it. And I really enjoyed it. This one was really comfortable to wear. So you can see, and it was, I did wear it on a heavy day. I just set these separately. These were the overnight pads. While I was traveling, I had to use the Lunapads overnight, and I actually I don't have any of the overnight Lunapads. I just didn't ever buy any of those. So I had to use just the regular Lunapads overnight, but once I got home, I used these overnight. Actually, I started with this one, and it was just, oh my gosh, it was just completely crazy. I don't know what happened. Sometimes at night, I guess when I lay down horizontally, sometimes my flow can stop or lighten considerably until I get up again the next morning, and then it resumes. But occasionally I have a night that's just completely crazy, and that's what happened. I'm so glad that I put in this really long one, and it's a yurt craft, and I just loved it because it was still somewhat close to Halloween. I just had to wear this one again. I just love this. I forgot to show in my last video. I wore this one in October, and I forgot to show instead of the stars, this one has little cats to indicate the absorbency. And so this is a heavy pad, and I use this for overnight. And I was so glad to wear it again because it was still close to Halloween. It was just about a week or so after Halloween. But this night was just completely crazy, and I don't know what happened. I don't know why, but this whole pad was soaked, and it had leaked. It's not the pad's fault. I think it was the angle that I was sleeping. I had leaked onto my pajamas, so it was a mess. The next night, I used this other Halloween pad. This is fig leaves, and I just had to take the opportunity to use the Halloween pads again. And it did fine because that night was not as crazy. And then the next night was less crazy, and I used this one. This one I sometimes wear during the day because it's really, I could have used this one for overnight too. Both of these are longer, a longer length, and so this was fine for overnight. This is Yurt Craft. And then, like I said, these are not really in the order that I wore them. These are just sort of depending on my flow at the time. After I'd reached like the third and fourth day, I thought that the period would go ahead and stop because it has been shorter since I switched the cloth. And so I really thought that it would go ahead and stop. And it wasn't, at least it wasn't as heavy as it was at the beginning. It just wasn't quite as crazy. But the flow was still there. And I was using these smaller pads and just changing them often during the day. Because I really thought that it would stop at any time. And these pads are actually, these are moderate, and they hold up well. I've used them before. And this is the Silver Liner. This is Yurt Craft. This is another Party in My Pants, and I got the wider style, and these are fig leaves. And so I was still using these smaller pads, expecting my period to stop, and it didn't. It just kept going, and going and going. And I just could not believe it. I just could not believe it. Just kept the flow, just kept coming steadily. It wasn't heavy at this point. It wasn't heavy, so these shorter pads were fine. But it wasn't really light either. And it just kept, it was just steady. It just kept, it kept going. And I think it was stress, like I've already said. These are fig leaves, and I just love them. This one was new. I hadn't worn this one before. I just love it. I couldn't wait to try it. This one is one of my favorites. I have used it before, but it's still, I mean, it's just adorable. This is also Candy Cloth Creations, the basic style, as opposed to her regular style. And I got this because it's flannel, and I just like the colors. And it was actually a set. It was a panty liner set, but this held up because it does have absorbency in there, even though it was labeled as a liner. And you know, because I was changing often, I was back home again and changing as often as I wanted to, and had a an endless supply, or almost endless supply of cloth pads because I overbought. But that's a different story. So I was changing a lot, and I used this one, and it worked well. This one's iCarly. Worn that one before. It worked well. And then once my period seemed like it was actually tapering off, I started using these liners. So these are several layers of flannel. Like that's at least 4 layers there. So these are several layers, but there's not really like an absorbency core in there. But I was just sort of keeping an eye on things and changing often, and so I just used a few liners as things were tapering off. And then finally I did actually stop. So that's it. I just wanted to show you ladies all of these pads and sort of share my experience with you, because I have previously said that the cloth pads seemed to have made my period shorter and lighter, and that is not what happened this month. But again, I think there were other factors involved, and so time will tell. We'll see how it goes next month. If you ladies have any questions, feel free to comment or send me a message. I wish all of you a happy period this month, and I'll see you next time.